All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chase Thomas podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, over there, up there, whatever you want to say, in
New York City.
New York City. But you wouldn't know it anymore because we're taping these on Wednesday nights now, and John does not have the New York City backdrop. Can you?
I do not.
Is that drywall? Can you break through? Can you see New York?
Yeah. Well, what I'm gonna do is just start painting skyscrapers and whatnot on the wall behind, so that everyone can feel like they're still part of the action.
Thank you. That is the bare minimum, John.
I think so too.
That's good. You got a pink overflow. Are you ready for Valentine's Day? Is that why we have a pink backdrop tonight?
Yeah, it's very seasonal, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. I love it.
I think the more we can remind our listeners and occasional viewers that love is perpetually in the air, the better off the world will be, or something like that. I don't know. It's
that was nice. I like that, John.
Cheers to love.
Cheers to love, and happy early birthday.
Birthday. It was yesterday.
Okay, because you posted something about it. I think your girlfriend posted, and you shared it, and I was like, wait, when is his birthday? And then we went out. I was confused.
We went out to dinner.
Supposed to say happy birthday.
We went out to dinner on Saturday because my birthday was on a Tuesday this year, so we wanted to do the celebration in advance. But yeah, so it was nice. I got a bunch of people actually saying happy birthday on my Instagram, and I didn't want to respond back to anyone to be like, hey, thanks. It's actually not for a few days.
Yeah.
But, it's
I was one of those people.
Yeah, the sentiment is what counts, truly.
There you go. Well, I saw it. I'm like, oh, I have this is confusing. Well, now I know, John. Now we know when Jon Tayler's birthday actually is. So there you go.
Exactly.
Well, did you have a good birthday? Everything good? Did you eat anything cool?
No. My girlfriend made me a very nice chocolate cake.
Okay.
So I had that going.
What kind of chocolate? Are we talking red velvet? Just chocolate on chocolate?
Chocolate on chocolate. Just as simple and straightforward as it can be.
Is that your go-to?
I think so. So.
I don't know if this is going to sound weird to the good folks on the program, but my parents can attest to this, John. Growing up, I'm not a big cake guy. I've never been a cake guy. I don't really like ice cream. Never been an ice cream guy either. I was just not a sweets guy growing up. That was just not my game. I was never a big sweets guy.
Okay.
But what I was a key lime pie guy. So I had key lime pie birthday cakes growing up.
That sounds awesome. I love key lime pie. It was pretty dope.
Yeah, that's my go-to. I love a good key lime pie. Key lime pie I'll do, and the closest cake I'll do. I've gotten into cheesecakes, but still, if I have an opportunity for any dessert or anything like that, I'm going to ask, do you have any key lime pie? Because key lime pie, that's my jam.
I think that's a very, very solid pie.
Pies are better. I'll go to my grave with this one. Pies are better.
I don't know about that, but
I
don't know if I'm ready.
I don't know about that. Oh my god!
Is that what he sounds like?
Oh yeah, Tony Romo was just losing his mind on Sunday night for Chiefs Bengals. A lot of his programming is just
Yeah, I appreciate that he genuinely seems to like football. Too much, honestly, and he can barely hide his excitement about it because think about it. How many, if any, MLB announcers fall into that same category of they love baseball so much that you can practically hear it in their voice?
National?
It's not a long list if it's even a list at all.
Joe Buck got a lot better over the years. If you go back and listen to early Joe Buck versus peak Joe Buck for the playoffs, night and day. The guy got better all the time.
He did. I came around a lot on Joe Buck. By the time he was done being Fox's lead guy, I found myself to be a Joe Buck appreciator. Yeah, especially because once you kind of take into account that his color guy or color guys for the great majority of that time were Tim McCarver and then Harold Reynolds and then John Smoltz, just some of the both grumpiest and least cogent men alive. Yeah. So, he didn't have a lot to work with a lot of the time, Joe Buck.
No, and they need to shake things up. We need more. We need more of those guys, and they need to be ready for Major League Baseball playoffs because it's just there's nothing better. Right,
well, I think I think it makes sense that it's Romo being that guy for the NFL because I think you're always going to get that the most from former players who are really man, I love this game so much. The thing about baseball is,
John, here comes the San Francisco Giants. They've come a long way. Carlos Correa, who?
Exactly. I think the big difference here is that Tony Romo is 42 years old. John Smoltz is 50. He was born in 67, so he's 55. That's a pretty sizable gap just in terms of and I think this is something that I want to see more out of baseball, and maybe it's going to be the case as the guys who retire nowadays are just going to be a little more both kind of telegenic, but also more eager to do that kind of stuff. Is that to see some of these newly retired guys kind of move directly into the booth, so you can still get them at that stage where they're enthusiastic about the sport as it is, as opposed to being one of those guys who's like now essentially a generation removed from playing the sport, and who's constantly being like, boy, this sure doesn't look like the baseball I played in my days. It's like, yeah, nobody cares. No one cares at all what baseball, like, if you have something concrete and interesting to say about how baseball is different nowadays and what that means, that's fine. If you're just going to grump constantly that, well, when I was in baseball, we used to play like this, and now they play, nobody cares. Nobody cares.
In there. I think Jeter would be good.
Oh no, Jeter is terminally dull.
I think he wouldn't. I think he'd open up. Also, you know what happened, and I'm concerned baseball is gonna be like, see what happens when we put like these recent retired good players, like the A-Rod stuff, who was just
A-Rod's a terrible color guy.
He's so bad. And I had high hopes for him too. Like I was like, maybe A-Rod could be good. A-Rod's to someone.
I think the high hopes for A-Rod were because he'd kind of done this 180 in the last years of his career as being a more approachable and friendly and just kind of more open out, like honest guy, that would carry over. But he just he talks so much like a kind of stereotypical announcer guy. He has a problem too, and Smoltz has this as well, where they start a sentence but they don't know where it's ending. They have a thought that they do not know how to finish it, and so you just get these kinds of rambly, digressive, just long-winded comments that don't really make a point at the end of the day. And ultimately, it just ends up being just a lot of talking and talking and talking and talking while you're like, why are you talking so much? That I think
Giant who was on with Grant Brisbee on his Athletic and MLB
Hunter
show
Pence?
last year. Who?
Hunter... You mean Hunter Pence?
Yeah, Hunter Pence. Yeah. He'd be good. Hunter Pence
I think,
is someone
that's
I
the
like
thing. I think you got to get guys who are a little quirky. Like, A-Rod isn't quirky. A-Rod is... Oh, A-Rod is... A-Rod is A-Rod. But yeah, guys like Pence, or weirdly, I think AJ Pierzynski has been really good as a color guy. I really like when they've had Justin Verlander and Adam Wainwright do color stuff. Adam Wainwright's been a great color guy. I hope when he retires, he goes into broadcasting.
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of guys who would qualify for that. Honestly, just grab relievers and have them do that. I would love to hear like color commentator Adam Ottavino. That would be great. Yeah. That dude's a kook, but in a fun way.
Yeah. And that's just what you need in the broadcast booth.
I think too, it's like having Hall of Famers in there, for as much as you can benefit from like, oh, the Hall of Famer, John Smoltz, and all his Hall of Fame thoughts. It's like, being a Hall of Famer doesn't mean you're any good at thinking or talking about baseball. Yeah. And in fact, it makes you more likely to be kind of a grump about baseball because everyone was worse than you. You were one of the select few best players ever to live. I feel like that colors things in a way where, I mean, like, I point to, and this isn't the right way to point because the SNY broadcasts of Gary, Keith, and Ron, both Ron Darling and Keith Hernandez, were very successful professional ball players. But I think there is something to like, the golden standard is like Bob Uecker, who was a pretty mediocre player for the majority of his career, but then became a beloved announcer for the Brewers. Because I think a lot of those guys too, they know how to make and take a joke. I think a guy like Smoltz can be just weird. He can be weirdly humorless for a former baseball player, considering all these guys are essentially just like oversized 17-year-olds.
By the way, was it just the Braves? Is it just the Braves? Just elite arms were all. I mean, way?
Maddox is a funny guy. Greg Maddux has always had a reputation of being kind of like a dirty prankster uncle. I don't know if he's ever had any interest in doing color broadcast. I would love to hear Greg Maddux talk baseball for 3 hours. That would be so much fun. But I think it's either that. You got to get the guys who have a sense of humor or kind of like, self-deprecating, who didn't have these kind of sterling careers and can kind of talk about being just a regular baseball player. Or you got to get the guys, I think, who are just hyper cerebral and analytical. Like I would pay, well, I don't think I pay any money, but I would love to see or hear someone like Garrett Cole in a broadcast booth. I think it'd be fascinating to watch a game through his eyes. Or similarly, one of the super, like a JD Martinez too, one of those super kind of data driven hitters who's really really into like swing mechanics and stuff. That can be a little boring and dry, I think, for some people, but I think if you get the right person who is articulate and thoughtful and can make a joke and take a joke too, I think that could work. And I just don't think that's really happened.
The elite guys, it's not as likely. It's why Trevor Plouffe is good on talking baseball. It's like he was a utility guy. Like those guys have to have a better sense of humor. They're more of like a glue guy in the locker room.
Yeah, or someone like a Jeff Francoeur or Curtis Granderson. I mean, look, I will never say a bad thing about Frenchie. I also have not heard him on broadcast.
I like Francoeur. I think he's fine on the booth. He's a nice, positive guy. I don't think he moves the needle. Like if he was on a national broadcast, I don't think he's moved.
Was he not on a playoff broadcast at one point? I want to say for TBS at some point in the last few years, he was part of one of their like early round boosts.
Maybe he was on with Ernie Johnson early on.
Possibly. The Ernie Johnson stuff, whenever TBS did that, I was always like, why are you making the inside the NBA guy do baseball broadcasting? Like, I know he's done it in the past, but it's like, so?
Did his dad do it?
Broadcast journalism is one endless nepotism chain, as you and I discussed very briefly with the Chip Carey news.
Yes.
So
we'll
that would not surprise me.
The replacement, if they get Tom Hart, who I'm really excited about, who does a lot of SEC basketball games and does Tennessee baseball games a lot, that's a home run for me. Like Tom Hart's a delight.
Well, you were saying too, you really like Atlanta's radio guy.
Yeah, I love Ben Ingram. I just don't want to lose Ben Ingram on the radio because
fair.
when I'm not around the TV and like I'm in the car and I can't watch the Braves game in person, like Ben Ingram is just so good on play-by-play on the radio that I don't want to lose him.
That's fair.
On the radio. Because baseball on the radio is just a beautiful thing. Like Craig Calcaterra,
I miss it.
Cup of Coffee. He had a great podcast when he was on with Keith Law last year. I remember running to it and talking about like I think he said he goes to sleep listening to baseball on the radio a lot, and that was it's just such a soothing, different kind of thing. Like I don't think any other sport has this romanticism that comes with listening to baseball on the radio.
I agree with that. I think, and I'm someone who. Part of how I got into, not how I got into baseball, part of how I followed the Red Sox before the advent of MLB TV was I found an online radio stream of a New Hampshire or Vermont radio station that for whatever reason broadcast online totally for free that carried the WEEI broadcast of Red Sox games. So in high school for a solid year or 2 years, the way I consumed Red Sox games was by listening to Joe Castiglione and who was his color partner who retired recently? Not recently, Jerry Trimpiano. They were great. I mean, really old school radio guys. You know, they've been doing the job forever. So, but yeah, I'm a really big fan of baseball on the radio if you get the right radio people to do it. And I know that I mean, and you see it here too in New York. Like Mets fans, they love Howie Rose. Yankees fans, I don't know how much of them love John Sterling anymore, but I think they have an appreciation for Sterling and Susan Waldman together, just as being kind of the fabric of being a Yankees fan for the last 25, 30 years at this point has been Waldman and Sterling. Obviously the Dodgers have Charlie Steiner, the Red Sox still have Joe Castiglione. Like, there are a lot of really great radio broadcasters out there, and it's obviously there's nothing that it's not like we can make radio the dominant media form again, but it's something where I hope that we manage to keep baseball on the radio forever. There really is something different and special about it that no other sport can replicate or touch, I think.
Yeah, and I feel like how a game completely went from listening on the radio for baseball. I don't think you can do that with any other sports.
Announcing a game for the radio, I've never done it, but it sounds brutally difficult. You have to be concise while being precise, and while the number of things you just have to walk people through an entire baseball game nonstop. Like it's crazy to me that's something that you have to do, and that there are guys who are just so good at it. They excel at it. So, and
you hear the voices sometimes. You're like, man, you were literally put on this planet to do nothing else outside of this. This is the only thing you could do. All
the various Casey Kasem types.
Absolutely. Jon Tayler. Since we last recorded, the Astros hired a GM. It's
finally.
It's not Capolella, who we joked about as just the most Astros thing possible.
That would have ruled so much. I would have stood up and clapped in my apartment if I'd seen that news. Like that would have been a real hard salute. My surprise is that they didn't just hire like Jeff Blum or someone, or just some former Astro that everyone knew.
Well, maybe they did. It's like a shadow hire situation where we're not putting it on there. Like, would that surprise anybody if they're just like, we're hiring a GM? And this would suck for Dan Brown, who came from the Atlanta Braves organization, well-respected, longtime executive, and important for a multitude of reasons, because now the Astros have a black general manager and a black manager.
First time that's happened in quite some time. I think Kenny Williams, and I'm forgetting the name of the manager.
It was Kenny Williams in Chicago, but I'm trying to remember who it was too, because
I saw the tweet about it too, and I'm blanking on it. But yes, it is. It is one of those things that
maybe it was just two people two managers of color. Was it him and Guillen? Like, just was that it?
It might have been that. Either way, it definitely says a lot about baseball, and how few men or how few people of color have been able to work their way into these higher positions. Obviously, you'd want to see more diversity than that. But, I mean, when it comes to just specifically Dana Brown, I think I saw one of the major reporters make a point that's like, there's a reason that you're seeing so many people say so many good things about the Astros hiring Dana Brown. It's because he's one of the best minds in baseball. And it's one of those things, too, where the more you learn about him, you're like, how did this guy not have a general manager job up until this point, Not just for the work he did in Atlanta, but he also was with the National Scouting Department back when they were, trying, and was doing some good stuff there as well. I think obviously we're not going to know how good of a hire it is for Houston until he actually gets a chance to do something. And by this point, the offseason is effectively over. So, which I think kind of fittingly means Brown's first real task as a general manager is going to be the draft. Because we've the offseason's over. We've passed the January 2nd international signing date. Spring training, obviously there'll be some decisions to be made, but a lot of those for the Astros I don't think are going to be they don't strike me as a team that's going to come into spring training with too many questions as with regards to who's on the roster, who isn't. So I think that makes sense for the Astros too, that Brown is basically just going to get to dive directly into scouting for the draft and getting Houston ready for the draft, which is what he's great at. And I think it signals to Houston's intent after years under Jeff Luhnow, and then I think to a slightly lesser degree under James Click, of kind of steering away from scouting and more into just hardcore heavy analytics and making a lot of data-driven decisions. I think you're seeing Houston kind of make that turn back toward getting some scouting, some like on-the-ground scouting back into the mix, which I think also speaks to what Houston's path would probably be going forward, which is to say, I don't see them being a big spending team in the future, which is not to say that they won't spend. But also, Houston has never, I don't think, been a team that's ran particularly huge payrolls. Even during those World Series years, they weren't getting there because they were giving, because they were handing out $300 million deals. A lot of that was just the very, very good core they developed of Altuve, Bregman, Correa, George Springer, briefly, Lance McCullers, Colin McHugh, who was the pitcher who walked from them? Not Verlander. Dallas Keuchel. I think it's probably, I think hiring Brown kind of signals a continuation in that regard. And I think also it probably points to Houston wanting to embrace that Atlanta model of let's develop these guys, and the moment they're up and the moment it looks like, okay, we actually have something, give them an offer. Just give them a big offer so that they can stay and we can build a core. Because if there's one thing with Houston is that core, that core stuck together for pretty long. I mean, Springer didn't leave until, I believe, after the 2019 season. Obviously, they held on to Correa until after the 2020 season. Bregman and Altuve are still there for the long term. But I think there's probably an emphasis there on, hey, we had such a good run with this core that we were able to lock them up, and Yordan Alvarez is now part of that too, locking him up long term. That let's just keep that going. There's no reason to kind of change that. And I think in that sense, Dana Brown, I don't really think that there's going to be much of a change in the way Houston operates, if only because I don't really see, why they would choose to. I think you would have expected changes if Jim Crane had kind of gone pick someone out of left field, if he had just done something like new general manager Jeff Bagwell. I think that would be the point where you kind of worry about Houston and you're like, what's going on here? That is not a move that you make. You
mentioned Jeff Bagwell. He was mentioned in some stuff I was looking up with him. Astros new GM, Dana Brown, said on Astro Line that Craig Biggio, Jeff Bagwell, and Dusty Baker were all instrumental in him coming to Houston.
And that makes sense. I think that they can all
they're
sell
in the process. So anyone who thinks that those guys are no longer in the process, it's a group effort.
Like I remember the Jeff Passan story from right after the World Series ended about Dusty essentially being the one to shoot down the trade that would have sent Wilson Contreras to Chicago for Jose Urquidy, because he wanted to keep Urquidy because he wanted rotation depth more than he felt like he needed another catcher. Obviously that worked out okay for Houston. They won the World Series, but at the same time, you're right. I think obviously Dusty, for as long as Dusty is there, is going to be a big part of the decision-making process. I think the way that Crane has seemingly empowered Biggio and Bagwell to be a big part of what the Astros are doing, I just think the main question for Dana Brown is, can you do the work while navigating what is going to be some level of ownership interference through Crane and through his deputies in Biggio and Bagwell? And I think part of hiring Brown too is he is, he's not a guy who I think, if Houston were to have brought in like a Dave Dombrowski, that pretty clearly and quickly sets up a power struggle between ownership and the GM that I think was kind of starting to happen with Click and Crane in the first place. So I think it makes sense to have a guy like Brown who doesn't really have that cachet, who doesn't really have that institutional authority, and especially too since he's new coming into Houston, he hasn't been able to build up that institutional authority within Houston, that I think it gives Crane a way to say we have an independent GM, but it's also someone I'm going to be working with closely, because ultimately Dana Brown is probably not going to have that much power when it comes to he's not going to be the sole decision maker in that front office. This is not like a Dombrowski in Philadelphia situation, or like I imagine it probably be closer
to extend the window, right? Like you bring in Dana Brown because you just won the title and you want to keep this thing going. Like Dana Brown is the one who keeps this thing afloat and keeps things contending.
Because the focus can be on scouting and player development, and I think that. I don't necessarily know that means Houston is just going to stop doing free agency. I kind of find that hard to believe, if only because Crane doesn't strike me as a guy who wants to sit through another long, shitty rebuild.
Yeah.
But I do think it points to, Brown is the GM there. He is in charge, but I don't think it's going to be something as simple as he makes all the decisions. I think it's more likely than not that he is essentially representing the front office side. He is now, I guess, the figurehead of the front office. I think he's the developer,
but in free agency, Crane's still probably the guy.
I think that makes sense, and I think especially because when it comes to free agency, the buck is going to stop with Crane because he's the one who signs every check. So, and I mean, again, we don't know exactly what the details were of the split between Crane and Click and what happened there, but I imagine that Brown is here because he's probably viewed as being more pliable, and as someone who can work more within a kind of power sharing system. And I think even just, him being in Atlanta, working under both Alex Anthopoulos and having to deal with Liberty Media ownership, and that those don't always see eye to eye. There are. And I think, his results in Atlanta speak for themselves. And I think ultimately it looks just like a very good hire for Houston, or at the very least, I think there was probably
what you're saying about Atlanta. Like there's a crossover, or Houston and Atlanta are trying to become each other, right?
Essentially, I think a lot of teams probably look at Atlanta's model and are like, well, yes, that seems to be the ideal way to build a baseball team.
Sign the best players really young,
generate super prospects, and then trick their agents into signing incredibly below market extensions.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Dana Brown's a good option for that, right? Like to identify those early players, get him in there, and he drafts well, and he's just really, really good at judging talent and working with the guys, and like the Kyle Tuckers of the world. Like he's already talked about extending Tucker, Framber Valdez, and Christian Javier.
And those are now the new three big guys in Houston who now that now that Correa's gone, and now that Bregman and Altuve are getting older, they want to start transitioning to that new group. Another name to keep in mind there is Hunter Brown, the reliever slash the Hunter Brown, the kind of Justin Verlander clone that they have, who I think is going to be also, if he stays healthy, a very big part of their core going forward. But I think that makes a lot of sense.
Drew Gilbert too, when he comes up, many are forgetting that Drew Gilbert. The next
no one is forgetting. No one who listens to this podcast is forgetting that, because every time we talk about the Astros, Drew Gilbert comes up. Just like how every time we talk about the Angels going forward, Ben Joyce is going to come up.
That's true. Well, as long as he doesn't get traded. He was in the Trash Pandas this past year. I hope he's going to have to come in soon, because the arm's going to fall off. Like, you want to make sure you get him in when he's still pitching 106. Like,
those guys those guys do not have the best shelf lives.
No, so get him up there. Let's see him. Ben Joyce, a lot of fun. But either way, good hire from the Astros, and I think if you're an Astros fan, you feel really good about where the organization is going, because Dana Brown, I think, is going to do a great job there. I think that's the best you can hope for as an Astros fan, right? Where you get the guy, because you were concerned it was just going to be Crane. Like, he wasn't going to hire a GM.
That was my fear, was that Crane was going to either just be like, fuck it, I'll run things, or that it was going to turn into Jim Crane hires one of his like Hall of Fame buddies to do the work. Like, I was really thinking about, like, is this going to end up with general manager Reggie Jackson, which would be incredibly funny, but very bad for the Astros, I think. I think it's obviously best if those guys, I mean, on the one hand, I think it's good to have the opinions and ideas of Hall of Famers when you can get them. I certainly, my color commentary aside. On the other hand, I don't think you want those guys making decisions. I think you want a group of people who are more in touch with how the game works now, analytically, scouting wise, player development wise. I think what those older guys are good for is more in a sense of like just being like, hey, I like this guy. He does stuff that looks good, and it's like, okay, well, we will take that under advisement, but you don't want that to be the deciding factor in this stuff. You don't want it to be Jeff Bagwell going, hey, I really like how this fella hits. It's like, no, it's got to be a little bit more than that.
For sure. Maybe it's like Dana's going to do his own thing and develop, and then it's like, hey, can y'all can talk to Crane. I'm just going to go do my job. Like, I just need Craig. Like, he's texting Craig and Jeff, like, hey, can y'all make sure that you are going on a tea time with Jim today? Like, I need to think about this scout, and I need to work with this agent. Like, I just could see like him, if the partnership works beautifully, where it's like they just split up the roles of like, hey, you hang out with Crane today, and I'm gonna go do real GM work.
Let's just keep him busy if we can.
Yes, he's trying to trade for Aroldis Chapman. The Orioles. Speaking of trades, they traded for. We were wondering because the Orioles were we've been upset. This is a Orioles, that'd be cool. A war Oriole. We have been an Orioles adjacent podcast for many months, John, and we've been upset about what the Orioles have done to this point this year, because the Orioles, they came out, they were even sellers at the deadline last year, still won enough, like they're right there in the playoff mix at the end of the year, have all this young talent that are coming up, and we'll talk about one of those guys, Gunnar Henderson, in a little bit, but like just talent everywhere. Adley Rutschman looks like he's going to be a star for the next decade in Baltimore, but they have not been active on the trade front. And I thought it was interesting because I was listening, not to name drop Keith Law again, but like his show was really good last week on his podcast, and he was talking about the Orioles, and something I had not thought about because you have to go back through their drafts, but they just stopped drafting pitching. Like Mike Elias is just not going to draft any arms. Like that, he's like, that's just not. I struggle with that in Houston, and that we did not do well in that department. So we're just going to sign or trade for those guys.
It can be tough, yeah.
Yeah. So that was their strategy. So it's like when you're worried about like what the Orioles are doing, you're like, well, if you're not drafting these guys, then what is your plan here? Because eventually you're going to have to add these arms. Like if you have all this young talent in the lineup, like none of it matters if you're not getting the arms and whatever you want to do. But here's your two options: is free agency or trades. And no free agents are signing up for Baltimore right now. Like that's just still not a place where free agents want to go pitch. Yes. And you're not getting the big names. So your only option now is trades. And we're like, okay, what are you doing? There are some good names out there. Like Pablo Lopez just got traded. Like you have this amazing farm system now that you built up. Like you're going to eventually have to start moving some of these pieces because you're going to be just overwhelmed, especially in the infield with all this talent, that like decisions have to be made, and you have to start flipping some of these guys and some of these prospects for the arms. Like that has to come. If you are not going to draft these starters in the early rounds, you have to start doing this to take that final step into contention in the AL East. And here we go. Like this is obviously not a final move, but Cole Irvin, I think, was someone we did not have on our radar, but good candidate. You pitched at a guy where an organization that obviously is selling, and I think I saw that the owners for the A's were in Vegas this week looking at stuff.
They could not make it more clear that they just do not give a crap about Oakland anymore.
No, like they're
just it is so it's really upsetting, but it's also darkly funny that they're just straight up like, no, we don't actually have a team right now. We do not care. I want them to put out an ad that's like, A's fans, come to our games or don't. We literally do not care. It matters not one bit anymore.
This is really just not an organ. Like they really are just like, well, come talk to us when we're in Vegas. Like that's just
come find us out there. It'll be better.
Will it? Well, we don't know, but we'll see. That's another day, another podcast. But what do you actually make of the trade, and do you like this for Baltimore?
I mean, it's aiming pretty low because Cole Irvin, I think, has been pretty well established, is pretty much a league average arm. He doesn't strike guys out. Strikeout rate per 9 of just 6.5 last year, 6.3 the year before. But, the things he does well, he doesn't walk a lot of guys. He doesn't give up too many home runs. He does give up a fair amount of hits, so you're going to need a good defense behind him. But luckily, Baltimore has what should be a pretty good defense behind him. Similarly with, I think, in their move for signing Kyle Gibson. What I find, and I think especially too, is that Baltimore didn't really have to give up a lot to get him. I think it was the guy they gave up was somewhere in the 15 to 25 range in their in their farm system. And I think especially for Baltimore, what really matters is Irvin's salary wise, that he is not going to be expensive for quite some time. This is a guy who is still not arbitration eligible. He's going to be ARB eligible next season. He's not going to be a free agent until after the 2027 season. This is a guy that they're going to have, and especially because he's a dude who does not put up big numbers, his arbitration stats are going to, or his arbitration pays, salaries better said, are going to be pretty reasonable, I think. So this is a guy I think they can pretty safely say, look, it's not sexy. He's not going to be an ace. He's not a number one guy. He's probably, there are going to be some starts where he's just going to get the crap beat out of him because he's too hittable and he can't miss bats. But at the end of the day, we're going to get 180 roughly league average innings for like $2 million. That's a really, really good deal, all things considered. To get the same thing in free agency, you're paying about $10 million a year. So I can completely understand it from Baltimore's side of things. And I think it makes sense too with that rotation where if you look at it before Irvin, not only, a lot of it depends on just how you feel mostly about last year's kind of Orioles breakouts and whether or not guys like Dean Kramer and Austin Voth are capable of putting up those kinds of numbers again. But I think with Irvin in place now, you don't have to worry about that so much. If a guy like Kramer or Voth takes a step backwards or isn't as good as he was last year, you have a little more space to move now. Do I like the Orioles rotation right now? Not really, no. Like Kyle Gibson, Cole Irvin, Kyle Bradish as a top three is pretty mediocre. Dean Kramer and Austin Voth, I know that there's some level of upside there, but I think a lot of this is you're waiting on Grayson Rodriguez to come up. 2, you're probably holding out some kind of hope that John Means is able to return before the end of the season, at least to some degree. Maybe you're also holding out the hope that DL Hall can follow Rodriguez up into the majors.
That's a lot for those two young arms.
It is, and I think that's part of the problem with Baltimore right now is that a lot of this team, pitching-wise, being better or being a contender rests on Rodriguez and Hall in particular coming up, staying healthy, and being productive. Because again, a top 2 of Kyle Gibson and Cole Irvin is not going to get you anywhere really.
No.
If you looked at this rotation right now and didn't know what Baltimore had did last year, you would probably just go, that's a last place team. Because that's a terrible rotation, at least on the surface.
And then you go and look at the Boston Red Sox lineup. And
look,
like, okay,
we don't have to do this, but point of it all being, I think Irvin makes sense for the Orioles because I think one of the things they really did need is guys like Gibson and Irvin to just be there and soak up innings so they don't.
And that's what he does so well. He just goes deep into games. Like that's maybe Cole Irvin's best. Again, he's going to eat up innings.
It's not going to be great, but it's going to be 180 league average innings, and that has its own value, especially because it's 180 innings. You're not asking Bruce Zimmerman and Spencer Watkins and all these other kind of quad A pitchers that haven't really worked out for Baltimore so far, that you're not asking them to have to deal with. Nor are you trying to, going out on a wing and a prayer and being like, maybe Johnny Cueto? I know Cueto's not available, but like that's also that was pretty much the level of starter available for Baltimore once they more or less decided that Carlos Rodon was not someone that they were going to pursue. And especially because I don't think that guys like Clayton Kershaw or Justin Verlander were ever particularly realistic for them. So if Baltimore was going to make a free agent move for a starter, it was probably going to be, I should say there were better options like along the lines of like a Chris Bassett or a Nate Eovaldi. I think if Baltimore
guys were just like, I don't want to go to Baltimore right now. Like,
that is also a possibility. If you're a free agent and you're looking at Baltimore, on the one hand, you're thinking, wow, that's a great young core they've got coming up. It's a fan base that really, when the team is playing well, really shows up, really
gorgeous
cares.
Stadium.
Gorgeous stadium. On the other side, you're in a really tough division. The ownership situation is incredibly messed up right now. It's an open question as to if the Orioles will actually stay in Baltimore, which is kind of an insane thing to think about. I think ultimately the Angelos family or whoever represents them will sell to an
sell to the
group.
Ripkins, and that's it.
I think they'll sell to an ownership group that will keep the team in Baltimore. But I can understand how if you're a free agent, you don't really feel great about the state of things in Baltimore, especially when you then look at it and go, but why haven't they signed any other free agents this offseason? Like, what are they doing?
It's why the ownership stuff? Like, it's still just I'm sure it's just.
I think it's a symbiotic relationship between ownership and the front office, where the front office is there particularly because ownership doesn't want to spend, and they are okay with that. Like that front office,
they've done a
that
great
front
job.
office knows its marching orders. So
right, but Elias does deserve credit. Like he's one of the league's best GMs. Like I think he has done an unbelievable job building up this farm, and they're ahead of the curve. I think
the Orioles farm system, the Orioles player development group is very, very good. No doubting that. That was obviously the goal all along with this teardown. My issue with it has always been and continues to be that there is more to be done beyond that. And I think in particular, And a lot of this too is like I feel better about the Orioles now that we've seen them actually put together a season where like, oh, you actually know how to make your pitchers do good stuff now.
Yeah.
Because for so long it was like you guys just don't know what you're doing with pitchers. You simply have no clue how to make that work.
And that's why it's perfect for Elias, right? Like you bring in the guy who's like, I'm not going to deal with it anymore. We're just going to get him through trades and free agents. That's what
I think
doing.
that makes, and especially I think one of the smart things Elias has done here, and one of the smart things you can do as a GM anytime is target a team like Oakland, where the price is going to be lower than with other teams because Oakland just simply doesn't care.
Right.
They're not looking for guys, they're not looking for the two best prospects in your system. They're like, who's the guy we can get who's basically major league ready and can play a position for 4 years at basically like for no money. Mm-hmm. That's essentially what they're looking for. Although it's funny, in trading a guy like Irvin is the kind of guy who should stay in Oakland theoretically for an extended period of time because he is not making money. Again, this next year will be his third year pre-arb. He's only going to make the major league minimum next year or just a little bit above it. Like, I think, I'm not sure, I'm trying to find his salary on his BREF page, but it's not showing up anywhere. Like, he's not going to make even close to $1 million next year. That's the kind of player that Oakland essentially would love to clone 25 times and just have that be their roster. I think the other side is I don't get this at all for Oakland. I really don't understand what the appeal of this is. Like, that
they're
team
getting rid of everybody. Like, they're not even pretending. Like, they're getting rid of everybody.
They're basically going to run out a AAA team. Like, it's honest. It's one of those things where, and I feel like I harp on this every week, but if Rob Manfred actually cared about the state of baseball, the sport, and the game, he would probably, it'd be nice if he could chime in and be like, I don't think what the A's are doing is good for the sport. I don't think it's particularly fair
right now for 2023.
It's gonna, whatever that number is, and I'm gonna look it up now. It's just something that's gonna make it. You're just gonna be like appalled at how low this number is. All right, I'm opening the Spot Track page.
This is gonna be depressing.
Oh boy. Oh my god. $41 million. That's about as much as Aaron Judge, and that's less than what Judge and Rodon alone will make this season.
And folks, let me just put this in comparison too. The Mets is 300.
Yeah, this is a seventh of the Mets payroll. This is a year of Max Scherzer, essentially. Boy, like we have talked a lot about the A's on this podcast and how just like craven and scummy this is to do to fans in that city and in the Bay Area to run out teams like this that not only have no hope of contending, but that it's painfully, visibly obvious that ownership has no interest in fielding anything even resembling a competitive team.
Yeah.
That all they care about is saving as much money as humanly possible so that eventually they can bolt and leave to go somewhere else. Which the other part of it too is seeing the news that, they want to open a stadium, a domed stadium in Vegas that's going to cost $1 billion. And part of you, and you want to be like, okay, where was that money before?
They're like, well, we're saving up. What do you think we're doing?
So you're telling me the owner of the A's can afford to pay for whatever chunk of that stadium he'll pay for versus whatever they're going to weasel out of the city of Las Vegas the same way that Mark Davis and the Raiders did. And you would think, too, that the city of Las Vegas, having seen how badly that has gone for them, how much money they spent on a team that nobody cares about, that isn't good, and that frankly brings nothing to the table to the city of Las Vegas, why are they going to make that same mistake again? Why are they going to turn to an even worse team that has an even smaller fan base? Also, I really feel for the city of Oakland just losing everything to Vegas for whatever reason. It's really something that within the span of a decade, the city of Oakland is going to lose the Raiders, the A's, has already lost the Warriors. They basically have no professional sports left in Oakland.
Yeah.
That's really, really upsetting. And it's really, really, like, they'll never hear this, but shame on John Fisher. Shame on A's ownership. Shame on the A's front office for going along with this.
Have you seen what the concept of that dome stadium? I'm looking at it now.
I have not actually seen it. I just saw the news story about it.
Okay, well, the concept dome stadium is objectively hilarious. You have to look.
Is it funnier than the Falcons having the collapsing roof thing that looks like a butthole?
Yes, it's
okay. That's a high bar to clear.
Well, I just sent it to you.
Okay.
The real time reaction to Jon Tayler on this.
Oh, what is this? That's a trackball.
Like
that's the ball you hit in Golden Tee. Also, how embarrassing in this? How embarrassing is it to have a baseball stadium next to a casino with a David Copperfield ad? Like, do you want to ensure that no one takes you seriously? Move to Vegas. Like if you want to be a professional sports team that nobody takes seriously and everyone looks at as a joke, move to the city where everything else is a joke. You know? Oh, and then it's also a baseball. That's the stupidest thing I've ever seen. This is horrible. It doesn't even look good. That's the
No, it looks terrible.
What is happening in this fourth photo with like a galaxy being born in the sky?
That's what I was looking at. I'm like, are they doing a galaxy up top? Are they doing like a space? What is that? Planetarium?
Yeah, you know what? This reminds me of Marlins Stadium, which is not a compliment.
No,
like Marlins Stadium. There are things about Marlins Stadium I genuinely, or at least pre-Jeets Marlins Stadium, because I haven't been in a bunch of years.
Yeah.
But overall, it's a really dull park.
Yeah.
And this is giving me the same vibes of just, look, we're trying to play baseball in an environment where baseball literally should just not be played because it's too hot. So we're just going to have to do it in a bubble.
Well, I also love the idea of like anybody who, can you imagine pitching and they're like, okay, what kind of stadium you want to do? You're like, well, we love what they've done with the Trop in Tampa Bay. So let's just do a Vegas Trop. And you're like,
why not just move the Rays to Vegas? At least I mean, look,
the Rays moved to Montreal.
I'm starting to think that baseball in Florida just shouldn't happen. Like, just forget baseball in Florida. The Sun Belt's
just hard. The Braves killed everybody. Like, the Braves just, when the 90s happened and they had the TBS Superstation, the Braves killed the Sun Belt for baseball just because you go from state to state here in the Southeast, everybody's a Braves fan. Like, the Braves have a gigantic fan base. And they won the South. Like, that was it. The Braves just took it all over.
It's just, I mean, I think there's a lot interesting to be dug into as to like how baseball decide. I think we talked about it too when we talked about Nashville and Portland and expansion. But boy, like it's just all of this is just so depressing for A's fans.
Yeah.
Like, not only are you going,
though, is it bad that I'm just like, just move them, please? Like, I'd rather, because I think they'll be more competitive and they'll do more if they're in Vegas.
No, I mean, I think the solution here is new ownership.
Yeah.
At the very least, because, I mean, look, I don't know if a new stadium is actually feasible in Oakland, given the many, many troubles they've run into with regards to finding a place that basically the one that the Giants will approve of them being in, because they have to essentially work out those borders between themselves, and also where they can get what they feel like is the appropriate amount of financing so that they're not footing the entire bill. To which I say, boo-hoo, pay for your own stadium, but clearly that's not the impetus in Oakland. So, and I don't know if new ownership, if it were to take over, would come in with that being priority number one, to be like, we are going to build a new stadium here, because even if they do have the money, it does seem like finding a locale is very, very difficult. And I wonder, too, how much patience at this point MLB has for the entire situation. I mean, Rob Manfred has said over and over and over again, when the topic of expansion comes up, we're not going to do anything until the situations in Oakland and Tampa with regards to their stadiums are resolved. Yeah. Because both of those teams are playing in incredibly substandard stadiums with ownership that does not care to spend on either the team itself or on figuring out a solution for the stadium problem. So I think on the one hand, I kind of agree with you. It's like, then just put them in Las Vegas and get it over with. And maybe someday in the future, baseball can come back to Oakland if an ownership group comes out of there that says, we want to make it happen. Of course, the only problem with that is once baseball leaves a town, it's really hard to bring it back, especially because the fee for a new team entering the league is $1 billion plus. Like it's going to be really, and that's the really unfortunate thing I think for A's fans is I think this would probably be the death of professional baseball in Oakland. And that's, again, to say nothing of the NFL is now gone. The NBA has effectively left because the Warriors are now in San Francisco. There's obviously no hockey out there. I don't know if there's a professional soccer team, but either way, like, professional sports in Oakland just seems to be dead. Yeah. And that's a real shame, because Oakland is one of our great American cities, one of the great producers of athletic talent in American history, a fan base with the A's that is engaged and lively and fun.
They had the best NBA fan base. Like the Oracle, that was just the best fan base. Like, it was the best
when
stadium.
The A's were good, that stadium was insane. Like, just insane, the level of noise that stadium could generate.
And just look at the difference with the Raiders in Oakland versus Vegas. Like, it's just not the same.
Because nobody in and this is the thing that's always been brought up in Vegas. Vegas is a transient city in the sense that most of the people living there they're not sticking around, and they're not from the area either. Like, and I don't know how many locals in Las Vegas actively even care about baseball. I know there's a AAA team there, but it's always been one that's gotten it's never really functioned properly, in part because of the environment in Vegas, which is to say it makes Coors look like like Safeco or whatever that stadium
Which
is
one
now
is
called.
it? Bryce or Strasburg, who was from Vegas?
Harper, as well as, I mean, that's a weird thing. Vegas is a baseball incubator.
Chris Bryant too, right?
Bryce Harper, Chris Bryant, Joey Gallo. Like, a lot of baseball talent comes out of Nevada and Las Vegas in particular. But playing baseball there professionally, I just personally don't think Las Vegas makes any sense as a home for professional sports, because it is not a city.
That's where it's going, John. Like,
it's not a city. It's a giant
4.
casino strip. Yeah. There is nothing to Las Vegas beyond the casinos and some strip clubs and some gun ranges. Like, and I if anyone from Vegas is listening, and I know I've now cost you your ad buy with the City of Las Vegas Tourism Commission, but I'm not saying Vegas is like but that's the thing. Like, I've been to Vegas 2 times now, once for winter meetings and once just as in college on a trip. I'm not a gambler, or at least I don't like gambling much. I'm not much for casino games, so I'm probably not the right person to go to Vegas anyway.
Yeah.
But I don't understand how you can spend more than 48 to 72 hours there without going insane or without going completely broke. Like, that's kind of the thing. Like, people don't come to Vegas to like hang out there, really. You go to gamble.
Yeah.
Or you go to see a show, or you go to, whatever else it is.
You go for your bachelor party,
are the Vegas A's just going to have to like sell like bachelor party suites? Like, is that going to be a thing where, like, come to the game, you're not going to care at all what's happening, where it's just basically going to be a minor league team? Like, are the people of Las Vegas, when the A's show up with this roster of just absolute cheap garbage, really going to sit there and be like, yeah, this is what we want?
Who's taking the rats? Do they get to come with?
Yeah, the feral cats. Like, yeah, what happens to the feral cats?
Do they get to come?
The possum in the Coliseum, in the press box. Like, what happens to the sewage smell? But yeah, I think ultimately Irvin, I think it's a fine move for Baltimore in an offseason.
I love that you're bringing this all back. That's good.
I know. It's good. We're tying it all back together. Yeah. I think Irvin is a good addition in what's been a pretty low-key offseason for Baltimore. I think he makes sense for what they do. For the A's, it's like I said, it's just depressing. It's really just sad. It makes me so sad.
John,
I think that's the saddest team situation in baseball.
Yeah, I would agree. I will say though, like, if I had to guess, like
at least Rockies games are fun to go to because Coors is a cool park.
Rockies is definitely not the saddest because, like you said, it's a good place to. You still have Chris Bryant. Like,
if you're a hardcore Rockies fan, yes, your life for the last.
Well, you're a sicko. If you're a hardcore
that's part of it. You crave pain if you're a hardcore Rockies fan.
But it seems like a really cool, chill place to go watch baseball on any given night. But like,
anyway,
I think you can make the case for me. The Nationals are the most depressing because I think the Nationals are in trouble for like a decade. I think this is going to take
it's really going to depend what new ownership does. I think actually, if you want to take a team that's in a really, really sad situation that shouldn't be, as we talked about last week with the Angels and Artie Moreno just sucker punching all the entirety of the fan base. That's a rough one.
The thing with the Angels is they still have some. I don't know. The Angels aren't quite there for me, but they're definitely in that bottom 6-7 range. Final thing, John. We're going to split this up into 2 weeks. So next week we'll do the comeback player of the year for the AL West. Okay. The comeback player of the year in the NL West this year for you will be who? Who do you feel right now you feel good where you're like, they were kind of bad. Not injury. That's a cop-out. I hate the injury stuff. That's like, that award is good player who is healthy now.
I mean, like, but that's kind of like that is essentially it, right? Is like you're just who's the guy who missed the most time last year who is going to probably going to be good next year?
Yeah, or someone who's had good years and you're like they've fallen off in the last couple years, been healthy, numbers aren't quite the same. Who would you say in the NL is your pick? You're like, I am betting on a huge WAR WRC plus season for this player, or just pitching good FIP pitcher.
Fernando Tatis Jr.
Oh
no, I'm not actually.
Oh my God! I was like, Jon Tayler.
Well, that would be the funniest possible thing is if Fernando Tatis Jr. wins comeback player of the year.
The Padres won the NL. Like, if that's the case.
I think there are a few candidates who make sense for me. Obviously it's going to depend how they play this year. But if you're looking at guys who were just flat out trash last year, who you're like, that should not have happened.
Yeah.
Nick Castellanos is probably number one. Had an awful season last year in every respect.
Yeah.
I don't. Though. I'm not. I mean, I don't know how confident I feel saying Castellanos should be better. I mean, he
can't be worse.
He can't be worse. It's really hard for him to be worse. But if nothing else, I think he's a good candidate. Cody Bellinger, another guy who I think would be, if he can resurrect his career in Chicago, I think would be an easy call on that one.
Yeah.
Here's one that's potentially out of left field, given how he just looked pretty kind of pedestrian for the majority of last season. Acuna. I think, and I don't want to say that if Acuna has a good season, I think he would need to put up an MVP season
Which he can do.
And I think if that were the case, that the voters would say, okay, well, he's just the MVP. We're not going to give him 2 awards. But I think that's a guy... I think it's also maybe a little harder to say Ronald Acuna comeback season because, like, he already came back. He just wasn't very good last year because it turns out knee injuries don't just heal overnight.
Also, get ready for Acuna because, like, did you see what happened in the Venezuelan league?
I did. He was pissed, and with good reason.
Yeah, he quit. Like, he like just retired from Venezuelan baseball.
He was just straight up like, I'm not doing this again. This is trash.
Also, if that man brings that kind of celebration out for a Major League Baseball game, I mean,
it's going to be really funny.
It's going to be funny, but I'm telling you, it's going to be wild to watch. Like, Acuna is just, he's a firecracker, man. And I don't know. He's definitely I love Ronald Acuna Jr., but like, how many games did he play last year? I want to pull
Acuna played 119 games.
Okay. When was the last time he played 130 or more?
Probably pre-knee injury, right?
Man.
I think the other thing with Acuna is a lot of what dragged down his numbers last year was he was defensively just really not good.
Yeah, that might be the knee.
That might be the knee, and I think what comeback player of the year, I think got, like, voters, or who exactly votes on comeback player of the year?
It's a good question. I don't know. I don't have a vote.
Either way, I think the numbers you'd probably be looking at for that would be more like the triple slash. So Acuna's probably not that great a candidate.
He actually is, because he's had a 114 WRC plus last year. We've seen, obviously, 2020 the peak of like 158.
I think,
through his numbers.
I think to be a comeback guy, if you had a bad season, you have to be like Castellanos or Bellinger level bad. Which is why I think my third guy, and this is probably the least likely of these 3, would be Yelich, Christian Yelich. Another guy who has really kind of fallen off since his... It'd be really funny if Yelich and Bellinger both just had great seasons again, but who's really fallen off after his MVP campaign, who's also struggled with injuries too to his back. I think if he has a great season and stays healthy, there's a pretty good chance that people will say, look, like, not only is he playing great again, but he's also healthy again, and that's basically 2 comebacks at once. I think he gets traded if that's
the case, right? Like, if Yelich is good and the back's okay, I think the Brewers trade him.
I'm really interested to see how Milwaukee does this season, because everything they have done in the offseason has indicated that team is just done spending, like, in every capacity. To say nothing of the fact that they are one of the teams that is going to be impacted by this Diamond Sports Group, Bally Sports implosion, bankruptcy nonsense. That's going to affect basically half the teams in the league, but you know, you look at a team like the Brewers where they're already kind of like playing it very tight with regards to payroll and stuff. Like, losing that revenue in whatever capacity that's going to happen is not going to be a good thing for them. And I think they're also a team that, you know, I think a team like the Braves, it's going to be a lot easier for the Braves to figure out a TV situation post Bally, you know, because they're, you know, people want to watch the Braves. The Brewers, that's a local concern. And I'm wondering, especially if this turns into something like, okay, no more regional sports networks. If you want to watch the Brewers, you buy a TV streaming package directly from the Brewers. You pay like $150 for a season's worth of games or whatever it ends up being.
You put it all into MLB TV, you find a
way
or something
to work like that. I think the problem for them is going to be they just don't have a fan base big enough to really make that work.
But that's where we're going anyway, right? Like, MLS is literally only doing Apple TV games.
Yeah, and I'm curious how that's going to work, because for the big teams it'll be fine. They have they have alternative revenue streams that are, you know, and people want to watch like the Yankees and the Red Sox and the Dodgers. Like, how many people are going to sign up for like a Pirates stream? You know, I mean, unless they're going to replicate.
Be on a watch list. Like, there just needs to be like anyone who signs up who's not in the Pittsburgh area.
I was going to say they put you on like the no-fly list.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to be really interested to see how that plays out and what comes next of that, because I do wonder. I do think you're right that MLB is going to look to take control of the streaming TV process for themselves. I think they want to avoid another regional sports network bubble bursting. But I think it's going to be
that's just you're trying to stop the inevitable. Like, that's what's happening here.
I think the hard thing is going to be, how do you make it work for the small market teams that are not going to have the same fan base subscriber numbers as like the Yankees, for example.
Yeah. Jon Tayler.
Yes.
That was fun. What do you want to plug as we wrap up here tonight on this edition of the program?
Well, over at Fangraphs, we're really just catching up on the news over the course of the week. This is kind of like, I feel like everything around the Super Bowl for every sport, everything just slows down for whatever reason. Like, the gravitational pull of the Super Bowl just kind of nullifies everything around it.
Yeah. Scott Boras just turns his phone off.
Pretty much, and he should. But obviously, as we get closer and closer to pitchers and catchers, which is just 2 weeks away now at this point, we're going to be kind of
exciting.
Finishing all our kind of off-season stuff, wrapping up our little bits of, like, for example, our Zips 2023 projections are now done for the teams. Dan will have the full 2023 Zip standings out, I think, later this week, possibly early next week, so keep an eye out for that. Otherwise, we'll be continuing to put out our top prospect lists from Eric Longenhagen, team by team, as he goes through the league, leading up to, in about 3 weeks, the debut of the 2023 Global Top 100 Prospect List. Always a really fun time at Fangraphs. We just do a whole big prospect week, just focus on the top 100 and all the cool stuff around it. So I think that's definitely keep an eye out for that. And as I mentioned last week, we're going to be starting a membership drive relatively soon. We're going to be introducing some new perks for members. So if you're not already a member at Fangraphs, come on over and sign up for $5 a month, $60 a year. Gets you ad-free browsing, and like I said, some new perks coming down the road. Fangraphs.com. It's baseball for fans who like graphs.
There you go. And just people who like baseball.
And people who like baseball. But I mean, graphs is in there, so we're contractually obligated to mention the graphs.
There you go. Jon Tayler, always a pleasure. I will talk to you next week.
Cool.
All right, hello. Welcome back. Chase Thomas Podcast, taping this on a Wednesday evening with somebody who is kind enough to take time away from hitting top of the key threes, corner threes, wherever you want him to shoot a three. Drew Pember, UNC Asheville Bulldogs. And I just realized you're just all Bulldogs all the time is where you always need to be. You need to be playing for the Bulldogs, whether it's Bearden, UNC Asheville. That's your team. Like the Bulldog stuff works for you, Drew.
It does. I need to keep it going.
There you go. I'm curious. Like I went back and watched your game this week. So you put up 48-10, Drew. And for the good folks, you can go check it out on YouTube and see what you're doing. It was a lot of fun to watch because the pick and pop threes, as I was joking about before we got started here. You hit 5 threes, and it was the first 5 shots made by your team in this one, and it was at the top of the key. It was in the corners, and you were feeling it early. So my question to you, what's going through your head when you're in the zone offensively right out of the gate for you? Because I know what it's like for a lot of guards, but as a big, what are you thinking?
I just kept trying to get them up. Usually the scouting report on me has been probably they back off a little bit because I like to get into the paint. I like to draw fouls so I can get to the line as well. So I kind of just whenever I catch the ball, I jab or a shot fake and kind of see where the defense is going to be. And then once I hit that first one, and then the one right after that, I hit the one at the top of the key. CB and Nick were in a ball screen. I was in the corner. I actually shot faked because I thought he was gonna come. I thought he was gonna run at me. He didn't run at me, so I shot that one. And then after I hit 2, I was just kind of like, come on, in like a selfish way, but like I don't want to sound selfish while saying that, but Tay's been in modes like that too, where you just feel like you feel like the hoop is just as big as possible, and you just everything you chuck up towards the rim goes in, and that's kind of how it felt for the first 6 minutes.
Do you like diving to the rim more, or do you like shooting threes more?
I don't know. Obviously 3 points are worth more, so you could argue that, but I mean, there's no feeling like dunking a basketball. So I mean,
I wouldn't know, Drew. I'm 5'11", 130. I would love to know what it's like, but I
didn't mean that as a. I didn't mean that.
No, I love it. Yeah, that's one day. Hey, I'm only 31. I might still get a couple more inches. Maybe one day I'll get there.
Yeah, but I don't know, man. I'd probably say threes just because there are more points, but you just can't really beat it.
I like it. When you made those first threes, though, like when you saw, like when you were talking about like just what the defense was throwing at you, but did you think coming in that you had an opportunity to hit a lot of threes against Presbyterian? Was there something on the scouting report?
Absolutely not. I think I had been shooting prior to the Presby game. I think I've been shooting like high teens, low 20s for my 3-point percentage in conference. Yeah. So
were most of those contested?
Yeah. Some of them were contested, some of them were open. I mean, I take tougher shots than most people, but I mean, I'm not saying it as an excuse, but that's I take more contested shots than wide open ones. So I just went into the game like normal and just kind of just take what the defense is giving you, and they were giving me that, so I kind of just took it and ran with it.
How many threes do you put up a day in practice?
A lot. We do a lot of shooting drills. I
Mm.
can't put a number on it, but I mean, there's a bunch, and then you get in extra workouts and stuff too. So that's, um, we get up a lot of shots. I'll say that.
So when you got 48, I'm curious, like, were you keeping up with it? Like when you were at 15, obviously, like that's early in the game. Did you know how many points you were at throughout, or did someone tell you like, hey man, you're at 40
Um,
something? No.
so I knew I was at 15 because I hit those
Mm,
five. I knew at halftime I had 27,
mm,
and after that, it kind of just like the flow of the game. Like no one told me, and I remember hitting a free throw,
mm,
and everyone was like cheering and celebrating. And I looked at the bench, and one of my boys, Sai, he was like, I was like, why? Like I gave him a look, like why is
mm,
everyone clapping? He was like, you got 40. Like I was
mm,
like, okay, like and that, and it's crazy. We were talking with Sai and I were actually talking about this today. Like in the locker room before the games, like you mess around and like I was
mm,
like, man, like I'm about to drop 50 today, just like
mm,
as like a joke. And we talked about like how like people probably think I'd be lying if I said that, like the kind of the LeBron, like the Le Cap, all that stuff
mm,
that's around Twitter. But we were joking around, and I mentioned that as a joke, and it happened.
mm,
And so now it's just we played Brent Fayez before the game, and I
mm.
think that's what got me going. But yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to get away from your question.
No, that's good.
It's yeah, the only time I knew was after that free throw, and then I heard something that was like I just heard record from the announcer, and I
Hmm.
was kind of like, and then afterwards, they all told me, and I was just, it didn't really hit me till like late. It didn't hit me until later that night, the next day. Um,
Was there a little part of you though that was like, man, if I'd known I was at 48, I would have pushed a little bit harder to get one more shot up,
to
like just to
get
hit
50,
50?
I mean, yeah, they fouled us at the end of the game. CB went to the
Mm.
line a couple times. I mean, I don't really, I mean, would it be nice to have 50? Yeah, because it's gonna be, extremely hard for me to get that milestone again.
I don't know, man. You got a lot. You still got a lot of season left.
Yeah, but I don't know. I would say I'm trying to be optimistic, but I'm just being realistic.
Mm.
That's not, it's a once in a lifetime thing. I'm blessed that my teammates even let me do
Mm.
that. That's kind of it's kind of nice, but yeah, who knows? You're right. Who knows?
What's the hardest part about scoring 48 points in a college basketball game?
Um, Probably just continuing to make shots
Mm.
because I don't, and also get to the line because I don't. I mean, I don't score 48 if I don't get to the line. I think I
Mm.
was 12 for 13, I believe. It's like I don't get to the line if, I mean, it's also too like I wanted to win the game. It wasn't like I was just going out of my way to like
Yeah.
score, that many points, and because
Yeah. It was all in the flow of the
how
game.
yeah, like how gut wrenching would it be if we go into the locker room afterwards and like I dropped 48 and we lose? So
Yeah.
it's like that was never like my goal was to just ball hog or anything like that. It
Hmm.
just happened in the flow of our offense. I'm thankful that my teammates don't get jealous or get entitled. Like they don't have like any entitlement. Like, oh, I'm supposed to be taking them. They just kind of just let it
Mm.
happen. And the next game, just let it happen with Tay. Like
Yeah.
I just like and that just shows how deep we are as a team. And we've had games where Nick's had 20. We've had games where Doc's had 20. Like it's not like we just have. It's just me that can score the rock. Like
Mm.
we've got a lot of tools, and I think that's one of the things that makes us a really good team.
I like it. Are you more of a corner three guy or a top of the three key
Uh,
guy?
top of the key. I was
Really?
actually so. I see you're wearing a Tennessee hat.
Yeah.
Jordan Bowden.
Yeah.
So after the game, he watched the highlights and he texted me because we play pickup whenever we go back home, and he was
Mm.
like, "There's no way they're just letting you shoot like catch and shoot top of key threes." I was like, "Bro, like that's how they guard me. I can't. I
Mm.
don't know their scout report." So top of the key is definitely my favorite shot. It's probably you could argue it's probably one of the easiest shots in basketball.
Hmm. What do you think's the hardest?
I'd probably say a corner three too.
Really?
Just because I mean, you got the backboard. And so if you're off in the slightest, you hit the side of the backboard. I mean, it's pretty embarrassing. But I probably would say, corner three is probably the hardest shot.
I like it. Where have you gotten more versatile as a scorer this year than where you were a year ago?
I'd probably say the face-up game. I've developed a little bit of that. Last year I was a lot of back to basket, seeing a lot of double teams. I still see a lot of double teams, but now if I catch it and I face up, I can kind of see the court and see where they're doubling and just get off the ball really quick, and then we pop it around to shooters. And
is that hard to learn?
No, not really. I mean, I like to think I have a pretty high basketball IQ, so it's not difficult for me to understand like where the help's coming from, like what. And I mean, I watch film with the coaches too, so they all show me like, when you do this, like there's 3 people guarding you, there's 4 people guarding you, there's 2 people. So it's just, and it also helps with my height. I mean, I'm 6'11", I can see over everyone, so that kind of helps. And then I've got other guys that have the same IQ as me in terms of like one more passing, pass fake drive, knife it, anything like that. So it's not. I wouldn't say it's really that difficult to adapt to double teams and things like that. So I'd probably say facing up has been one of the biggest improvements.
Where can you still grow as a player this year?
Oh, man, a lot of areas. Turnovers are a big one. Obviously, I need to get stronger, faster. I need to weigh more, which is hard to do during the season. So that's kind of an all-season thing. During the season would probably be turnovers. Just getting guys shots. I mean, I've missed Nick's. I feel bad because Nick and Amadou, they do so much for us, and like there have been so many times I've watched on film where I see 2, and then they're wide open in the paint, and I'll put it on the rim, and it's either a bucket or it's considered a bad shot. So
yeah,
I need to get guys involved more. And I don't think I've been like egregiously selfish or like I've been like been overshooting or anything like that. But which they've allowed me to embrace the role that I have. So in order for us to continue what you're doing, there's not really like, oh, I need to change this or change that. Just keep doing what we're doing pretty much.
How does the scheme that you're playing in UNC Asheville benefit you the most? Why do you enjoy playing in this scheme?
I mean, it's a 5-out. I mean, we press, we push the ball. Coach Merrill lets me bring it up. It's very modernized. It's very we shoot a lot of threes. And I mean, like we play through me, like, and what kid wouldn't want to be in that role, So it's nice to have that because in Tennessee I didn't really get a lot of time, and which I learned a lot being there, which a lot of people don't really necessarily understand is like the work ethic, the X's and O's, the extra film, like all that stuff I learned at Tennessee. So when I came here,
you're more ready.
I was able to take everything with a grain of salt and just move on and just completely change, I guess, people's perspective of me, and just end up just being a hooper, man. And I'm really blessed that the coaching staff and my teammates welcome me with open arms, and it's been beneficial for both parties.
What's been the biggest change for you going from UT to UNC Asheville?
I'd probably say just ball, man. It's the city's a similar, like,
not far. You're an hour and a half down the road.
Yeah, it's not far at all. It's a pretty relaxed city. It's pretty calm. It's not the climate's the same. The weather's the same.
Are you a hiker?
Nah, I'm not. I don't get out. I don't get out much.
Okay, no hiking. Okay.
We did go on a team hike in the summer. That was an experience. I won't say I won't go, but it's just not.
It's not your thing.
It's not my cup of tea.
Did you go to the minor league baseball? Have you been to that before?
I'm not.
Okay, so you got to get out more in Asheville, man. It's pretty town, pretty city.
Yeah. No, I've been downtown. I've been in a couple of like food spots, but
a lot of good restaurants in Asheville.
Yeah, oh man.
What's your favorite?
I haven't really. I like Rockies, man.
Okay.
Rockies Hot Chicken Shack. It's real. I mean, it's probably I go there with my dad almost after every game. on Saturdays and stuff. It's really good. It's definitely my favorite spot.
Was your dad at the game for the 48-point game?
Yeah, it was my mom and my dad. Yeah.
Okay, what'd they say? Did
I
they know?
believe
Yeah. How was that for you? Like after the game, were they like, we were doing this, we were doing 5-0, we were doing 5-0, we were chanting in the back. You didn't see us. We were trying to tell you you were close.
My parents already say too much. My dad, I can every once in a while I can hear my dad, and I just want to just turn and just be like, but it's just
so they get into it.
Oh man, my dad used to coach me, so he's he's all into it. But I mean, they're just loving parents, man. I mean, they're just passionate about me. I don't blame them. I don't tell them what to do and what not to do. They kind of know when they're crossing the line. But they're just proud of me, like any parent.
There you go. I like it. We'll end on this. Your game day routine. What's your game day routine usually like, Drew?
Go to class. Eat.
What are you eating? Like, what's your game day meal like?
Ah, man, we get pregame meal, and then before that, I'd probably say Chick-fil-A. I'm a big Chick-fil-A guy. I probably keep
your Chick-fil-A order?
I get a 12 count with a fry. I get a spicy sandwich, add pepper jack cheese. Then I get
pepper jack.
Yeah. I get the mac and cheese, and then I usually get a water on game days, but their sweet tea. You can't beat their sweet tea. So I'll eat that. Get some shots up, get treatment before shoot around. Then we'll have shoot around. And if we've got time between, class and before I start getting shots and shoot around, I'll take a nap. I'm a huge nap guy on game day. I don't know what it is. Coach Morrell at one point said I would probably lead the Big South in nap hours and nap minutes. And that's all. I take so many naps.
Are we talking about 20-minute power naps, or what are we doing here? Like, how long are your naps generally speaking?
I can take anywhere from a 20-minute to probably an hour and a half is probably my max.
Okay.
But if I can just get anything in that general area,
but you're not groggy after when you wake up. You're good to go.
No. I'm good. It's basically just rejuvenates me. That's and then we got shoot around, then we'll have pregame meal, then I'll chill for a little bit, and then I'll start treatment right before we get ready, and then we're on the court an hour and 15 before.
What's the song that you listen to the most? What do you always listen to before a game?
I'm a Giveon guy. I listen to slow music, which a lot of people probably don't.
So you're not controlling the aux cord for the team bus?
No, that's Cy actually does that. He plays a lot of G Herbo, but Giveon is. I listen to Giveon before every single game. It's. I don't know why. It's just kind of just. I couldn't even tell you. I don't.
Does it go back to Beard and you were doing this?
No.
Okay.
Bearden was a lot of. I listened to Uzi a lot.
Okay.
Rod Wave. I listen to Rod too. But yeah, Giveon's 100% gotta be on my pregame playlist.
I like it. Well, this has been great, Drew. Thank you so much for making the time today.
Man, absolutely.
This was a lot of fun. I appreciate you making the time, and good luck the rest of the way. Early February, a lot of work to do, a lot of 50-point opportunities still to come. Enjoy UNC Asheville. Get out, man. Let's do a hike.
Yeah.
I want to see Drew Pember a hike. I want to see an update on Drew entering the woods, finding himself a black bear, whatever.
Man, I don't know about that one. I can't promise you anything.
There you go. I like it. Drew, I wish you nothing but the best, man. Good luck, and hope to maybe reconvene again soon.
Appreciate you, man.
Hello. Welcome back. Chase Thomas Podcast, taping this on a Wednesday afternoon. Coach Derek Hunt has returned, Maryville Rebels head football coach, on this rainy, dreary, now typical Knoxville, Tennessee day here in the winter. Coach, how's it going?
Good, man. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you. You're growing the hair out.
Yeah, a little bit. I cut my own hair since I was 14.
Okay.
So I, I'll let it grow out I guess not long, but
Mm.
you know, maybe every other month I'll cut it.
What about faux hawk? Could we do a faux hawk this fall?
Probably not.
Mm-hmm.
I did have a mohawk when I was in college for about 2 or 3 months, but
okay.
Yeah, can't pull
What'd
it
the
off
wife
anymore.
think?
I don't think she. Nobody cares when you're 21.
Okay.
But I don't
That's
know
when
about.
You can experiment.
Yeah, I don't know about at 34 how that would work.
No, I don't know. You could see what the kids think. Just try some different stuff. You never know. Faux hawk, mohawk. There's all kinds of time, man. You're head coach. Like you can do whatever. You can experiment a little bit.
I don't know about do whatever.
I like it. Well, my first question to you. So it was funny. I was listening to this NFL podcast the other day, and it made me think about college or high school, excuse me, because something that like me going to all these different games in high school and watching Tennessee and watching the pros, watching high school. One of the things I think about is like, what is football going to look like 20 years from now, 30 years from now, right?
Yeah.
And something that they had mentioned and wrote about, and this was Barnwell from ESPN had written about it and talking to other NFL coaches, I think, was that the hook and ladder for pass option plays is something that's going to be a common thing. When I don't know if you saw the Chiefs game where Travis Kelce had that pitch on that curl where I think it was Jerick McKinnon was out in the flats and he was just sitting there waiting for Kelce to run the route. If he was open, Kelce always knew he was pitching that ball right there for McKinnon in the flat, and it was fine. It looked seamless. Like it wasn't really all that crazy of a play. Do you think that's what we're going to see more? Because obviously there's so much RPO in the sport. Do you think we're going to have RPO stuff, player option stuff, just out in the flat like that in the next 10 to 20 years? And that's going to be like a common thing that defenses are going to have to play so disciplined that you're now going to have to care not only about what the quarterback is doing with option plays, but also the tight end and receivers on any given down.
That's a fun question to think about.
Mm-hmm.
I would bet against that. I would say that's probably not where we're heading.
Okay.
Time will tell, and that would be cool if we did. But here's what we got to think about, Chase. This is Travis Kelce, who's the best tight end in the world right now. Okay, that obviously has a lot of trust. He's been in the same system. I think the Chiefs drafted him, so he knows Mahomes and his coach. As good as any tight end could know a quarterback and a coach. So again, it's the best tight end in the world right now. So they have a lot of faith in him. So that if they throw him the ball, they trust that he's going to make a really good decision. Hey, it's open. I need to toss it over there. And it was open, but he just didn't execute it. You know? And they probably practiced that play, who knows how many times, and still didn't execute it. And so I think about that. Okay, that looks great. You probably saw it. Some people will probably show it on some clinic tape this offseason.
Yeah.
But can you imagine a 16-year-old, tight end that, he's been playing football for 3 years. And so we're going to throw him the ball, or anybody, receiver, doesn't matter. We're going to throw him the ball and trust that he makes a really good decision out in the middle of the field. Like when teams that run the option a lot, back when I was playing, we would run veer, which is a version of triple. It's a way to run triple option, or true teams that run true triple option. Like they have to practice it until they're blue in the face to get average at it. Just to be average. You think of like Navy and Army, those teams, like they do it. That's all they do. And so, and they're the best in the world at it because that's all they do. And so, in high school, you have to practice it all the time. You have to major in it. You can't minor in the option. You have to major in it. And I just don't see how we could, especially in the high school game. Now, maybe in the pros, but I don't see how you could say, all right, we're going to throw it to you downfield, and you're going to decide whether to pitch or not. Like, it's going to be disastrous. Like, I'm sure it would work in trick plays and sometimes like that. And like hook and ladder type plays have worked, in the past at Maryville. I know Alcoa's, that's one of their favorite plays. They executed against us a year or two ago, maybe 2 years ago. I've seen it happen in state championship games for huge plays, and obviously in the pros a couple times. But there's no way it becomes football mainstream.
Yeah, so that you don't have to worry about like just every single play, like your defense, like you got to stay disciplined. There's always the possibility, like doesn't matter where the quarterback's going with the football, like they're just watch and be ready for an option play once he receives the ball. You don't think we're anywhere near that? Yeah,
I don't, but
yeah.
maybe I'm just that far behind. So
well, no, it makes sense. And I wonder too, I thought about it from a flag football perspective where like, kids are thinking about that with more and more kids playing that up until high school, where that's something they would practice. And maybe that's would make it easier if they're learning in that respect. Like that's just something that they just are doing up until high school. I don't know. But like you said, like, you have to spend so much time on it.
The flag would be a great place to practice it if you're going to practice it.
Right? Like that's where you would practice
no
it.
Pressure.
Exactly.
He dropped it and fumbled it and they got it. Okay, who cares? But on a Friday night.
Yeah, that's a totally different ball game.
Yeah, exactly.
So what do you think then? What do you think is going to be the biggest thing? If you had to guess, Coach, like you had to guess and look into your crystal ball, clairvoyant coach Derek Hunt right here. What do you think looks the most different about football in the next 20 years in the high school level?
That's a great question. And of course I don't know the answer. I'll give an opinion, or really a guess. It's not, so much of the game the last 10 years has changed because of the rules.
Right.
So it's not like football has progressed so much. We've just been reactive to what rules have been put in place. And let me be very clear. They're not making any rules to help teams play defense. Like that's not happening, and it's not going to happen just because of where the safety of the game comes into play. And, and I'm a traditionalist, I think, even though I'm just 34, but I still feel like, football was made for the rough and tough, and although I'll be the first to admit I probably wasn't one of those guys, but I still loved football. And it's changed so much, even in the last 10 years, with concussions and all, I was watching tape. It's a perfect example. I was watching tape of a 2006 Maryville game last week, and we punted the ball to Maryville was playing Powell. We punted the ball to Powell. Powell was really good that year. And I was going back to look at I wasn't just watching the whole game. I was going back to look for a specific play. Punted the ball to Powell, and there was 3 blocks that Powell threw that were blindside, helmet to helmet, decleaters, and their sidelines going nuts. And our kids get up, run off the field, and the football game goes on. No flags, obviously, because that was part of it. Yeah. Now, like on punt team, we're literally coaching our kids, and you see it on Sunday nights, Saturdays, colleges. They're running with their hands in the air just to like set a pick, essentially. And so because it's a rule, you get flagged 15 yards, and in college you can get thrown out of the game, and so I mean, no chance that happens now. Yeah. It's egregious if it does. And that's only been 10, 15 years. Yeah. So to answer your question, it's hard to really know where the game's going because you don't know what rule changes are going to be put in play. But I just see it becoming more and more, I hate to say this, of a passing game. And I don't like that. I mean, I think at Maryville, we try to be really balanced. We like to throw the ball for sure. But we're never going to get away from the run game in totality. So we're always going to play to the strengths of our kids. And, if we can throw it and have great receivers that year, maybe we'll be more pass heavy. And if not, then we're run heavy. But, I just don't want to see – I like 7-on-7 to an extent. I think I think at a certain point, though, you get to a point where there's no value. Like you do so much of it, there's a point where you kind of it's overdue, it's over, and it's
diminishing returns.
Of course. Yeah. The law of diminishing returns. And it's just like, so we do some of it, but we do enough to improve and kind of get as much as we can out of it, but it's not real football. Yeah. At least not now. And maybe that's where it's going. So, I mean, the NFL has done that in the last few years. So maybe that's where football in itself is going.
Yeah. I think we're going to get to the point where I don't think kickoffs will exist. I don't think kickoffs will be a part of it because we're now like, how many kick returns do we really see anymore? We're just going to get to the point where it's like, what are we even doing? What's the point of even doing this for 4 returns a season for some guys? Like, what is the point of this? If we're going to make it that safe, we're going to move it up that much where we're kicking out of the end zone anyway. What's the point of even going through this song and dance just to get some cardio for some guys who are only playing special teams? Like, what are we actually doing here? And like you said, the decleaters and stuff, like it's, I think that's what they found, right? Was like special teams was like the biggest one where you would see a lot of the concussions, a lot of kids just getting rocked when they're running full speed like that. So like that was something that took out of the game. But I think in terms of running the ball, I think most teams will probably like have. I think more at the like I what was it? I think Pigeon Forge. What do they run? What is Pigeon Forge running? They run the wing tee. I think they run the wing tee, and like they grow up with that. Like the middle school runs the wing tee, the elementary school runs the wing tee. Like you grew up in that system. I don't think they're going to change regardless of what happens with the NFL. So I think high school will probably be okay. And I like that. I like that like different communities have different styles. Like Maryville has a style, like you said in our last conversation last year, where like you grow up in the Maryville, not like kind of like Maryville way, but like the Maryville scheme, the Maryville style. So these kids, once they get to high school, they're ready to go and they know kind of what's going to be expected of them, right? Like to throw that for a loop just because the game is going somewhere different on the national level. I don't know. I just don't see that as much. And I think we've gotten to the point where like you see the Niners, their run first team. They one of the Kyle Shanahan and his scheme, he wants to run down your throats. And I think there will always be different outliers. And it's also just you pass to set up the run, or like to kill clock, to close out games. I think a lot of teams will still, and a lot of coaches will prefer to do that rather than like, I get what you're saying with like the quick curls and like a 5-yard curl is the same as just a running just an RPO or whatever. But like, I think that, I don't know. I don't think we'll ever get that far, but I do think partly because there's just not enough good quarterbacks, right? Like nobody has not everybody has a great quarterback to do that, to pass all the time.
There's definitely a shortage of great quarterbacks. And,
right. Yeah.
If you think of all, of the millions of kids in the world that want to play quarterback, there's, and you look in the NFL and, there's probably only 15 to 20, if that team would like to sign the long-term deals. And you were talking about it. Well, where does football go in 20 years? I don't know. But at the end of the day, teams are always going to do what their players are good at.
Yep.
And like, that's what we try to do at Maryville. Like if, so we'll always change our offense schematically a little bit every year to fit our personnel. I mean, this is a high school. So, whoever, we can't decide who's going to be born in Maryville, and then, 16 years later, they're in our, so we have to adjust to them. The college, you can go recruit what you want. And then in pros, you can draft and, pick up in free agency what you want. But at the end of the day, if Patrick Mahomes played for the 49ers, I guarantee you that offense looks different.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to hand the ball off 40 times a game if you've got Patrick Mahomes at quarterback.
Right.
And the same is true, the 49ers are built to run the football. They're built for that. They have one of the best tight ends in the game. They had Christian McCaffrey, Mitchell at running back, and big offensive linemen. And so that's who they are schematically. Now, Shanahan's always kind of been a run first, boot off of it type of play caller. He's phenomenal. I think he's probably one of the most impressive football coaches in the game right now. Obviously, coaches for the 49ers. But I just think they're always going to do what their players are good at. And they use Deebo Samuel. I mean, he's so good at everything, and they use him everywhere. So I guess, if the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, if they threw 5 passes only, they're probably going to get beat.
Yeah.
They've got the best quarterback in the world right now, so they're going to use his skill set.
Yeah, you just look at the difference with Alex Smith at quarterback for the Chiefs years ago versus Mahomes. It's a little bit different. They adapt based on what you have. But not everybody, like you said, has Patrick Mahomes. And something tells me not everybody in East Tennessee has Patrick Mahomes at quarterback getting ready for high school. No.
They don't exist.
No. What was your favorite moment from this past season?
That's a good question. Probably down at Bradley, we obviously we went through a lot of adversity this year. We had, everybody thought we were young. We weren't young. We were inexperienced, so we had 17 seniors starting, but all but like 3 of them hadn't played a snap on a Friday night as a starter. So, we had some adversity and had some tough losses, a couple, and early in the year, and in every game you look back, we're a possession in the fourth quarter away from having a chance to take the lead, in every game that we lost. And we go down to, we had come off a tough loss against Bradley. We just lost Noah Vaughn for the year, broke his leg, who was our, running back and committed to Virginia. So great player. So how are you going to respond,
Yeah.
And man, our kids, I can't say enough about how impressive this that Maryville program is, and the Maryville kids, and they just practiced their rear ends off that week. And Bradley was a good football team, and we went on the road, and it was like, I can't remember the exact score at halftime, but I thought it was like 10-7 or 13-7, and we ended up winning that game, like 38-7 or 38-10, and really pulled away in the second half, and that got us going. And that was, I think, that was the first region win, Chase, since I've been head coach, that I truly probably celebrated. I felt like since I'd been head coach, a lot of those wins were more relief than anything. Obviously you feel the pressure at Maryville, the pressure to win, and fortunately we were able to win some state championships, recently, but that doesn't make it go away. That doesn't make the pressure go away. I mean, Coach Quarles, who I played for, my mentor, who I think the world of, he set the bar so high, and all I want to do as a coach, head coach, is maintain that standard of excellence at Maryville. It's very important to me, and our kids are phenomenal. Fans are phenomenal. Programs for assistant coach. We got the best coaching staff in the state. I would go to bat for them any day. So the fact that we were able to go down there to Bradley after, the first, I think somebody said it was like the first loss to a Knox team, since the early 2000s. And I didn't know all that stuff. You'd hear it along the way, but I don't really pay attention to streaks. But anyway, how do you respond? Well, we go down there and win that game, secure the number one seed in the region, and then really start playing good football in the playoffs. And that was exciting. I mean, our kids deserved that. They kind of had been through the gauntlet, and for them to respond that way and experience the success that we experienced in the playoffs and get all the way back to the semifinals. That I think I remember after we'd lost that game to West in week 9, of course we lost Noah. I had heard there's people to my face, Maryville fans saying, "Yeah, we're not getting to the semis with the team." It's like, golly, give us a chance. Bradley Central, Gage Ledoux, who had been playing fullback, goes back to running back, and all he does is run for 260 yards in the first game. And so it's like, we're going to be fine. And I credit our kids and our coaches for just keep working. Less show horse, more plow horse. Let's just keep working, keep grinding. And man, we did. We played some really good football in the playoffs, and even did some good things against Oakland. Now they were on a different level. Yeah. It was a good finish to the year. Obviously, I hate losing. I don't ever want to lose, but all in all, super proud of this team to get back to the semifinal game. After kind of the bumps in the road that we had, I couldn't be more prouder of them.
Okay, I've never heard that before. Hold on, say more plow horse. What was that expression? I have not heard that before. Say that one more time.
Less show horse, more plow horse. So
I'm going to use that. I like that. Okay, that's a good one.
Yeah, just get to work, baby. Start working.
I like it. You get one do-over coaching to coach from this past year. Which game do you take?
Do-over?
Yeah, you get one coaching do-over that you, after on Saturday, you're having your cup of coffee and you're like,
dang, just one's tough. Because every game, I'm thinking this was stupid.
Okay.
Oh, man. Obviously, I'm going to point to the 3 games that we lost in the regular season.
It could be a game you won where you're like, I shouldn't have, it could have gotten a lot differently. I would have had a lot less stress if I had done this differently.
Man, you put me on the spot with this one because it's really hard to pick just one. Like I said, on a Saturday morning, when I watch it back, that's typically when I watch it back. Get up Saturday morning, watch it, and like there's a plethora of calls where I'm like, man, that was just so tough. and you try to make notes and be better.
Yeah.
It's all about putting your kids in a spot to be successful. And when you don't do that, it's disappointing because you work too hard not to do that. Man, one call, here's what I'll go with this. We kicked the ball off to Oakland. The first game of the first play of the game in the semi, they ran it back for a touchdown. And if we had to do that again, and it's my fault, and Coach White, who does our kickoff team, does a phenomenal job with kickoff. He's one of the best special team coaches I've ever been around. It's fun to watch. He gets after it too. But I was the one telling him the whole time, no, we kind of beefed up our kickoff team, and I'm pushing him all week. Hey, let's kick it off. Let's kick it off. He probably would have, basically a sky kick, so they can't return it.
Yeah,
probably would have leaned that way if it wasn't for me pressuring him. Maybe not pressuring, but just hoping that we'd give it a chance. And let guys go make a tackle so that they have to drive, maybe 80 yards or 70 yards versus 60.
Yeah.
When we kick it off to them and they run it back for a touchdown, and now you're down 7-0. You're down 7-0 to a team you're going to have to upset. They're the best team, and you got to get off. You have to get off to a good start in those games, especially on the road. And so, I kicked myself over that one because I know how much I influenced Coach White to do that, and I think that he was probably right and I was wrong.
Interesting. What was different about this year's team that surprised you before the year? So, like, thinking back to what you thought this team was going to be in August, what surprised you after it was all said and done that you were like, okay, I didn't see that coming with this year's group? Yeah.
So this year's team, and of course this is something we talk about with them. We certainly weren't like the most talented team we've ever had. But the kids, now that don't mean we didn't have some good players, because we did. But this team was probably the grittiest we've ever had. And you learn a lot about yourself when you lose. When you fail. When you win, Chase, like, it's easy. Winning covers up a lot of mistakes, a lot of things that you're really not doing that well. But if you're winning, it can kind of get glossed over,
right?
And doesn't get fixed. And so, as a head coach this year, for me, it was, number one, humbling, but two, it was a great learning experience to say, we lost this game and could have won it had I done this differently. Had I set us on a different path here. And so, I just think when I look back at this team in August versus, I didn't realize how mentally tough this team was, because they were super mentally tough. And the fact that we finished the way that we did, this team, like, usually when good teams, things don't go well, they start pointing fingers and they'll start, griping at each other. And man, our kids didn't do that one bit, not one bit. And they didn't give us any troubles at practice. We'd show up on a Monday after a tough game. Of course, I'm sitting here talking like it happened. We lost every game, and we didn't.
That's coaching, man. That's how it feels. Like, that's coaching.
But they were fun. I mean, our kids were phenomenal. And I just, like I said, the high character of our kids was just really, it's what made this year really fun.
I like it. What did you learn about yourself as a coach this year?
Yeah, I mean, every year you think, all right, well, we did a pretty good job at this and this. And it's so easy, I think, to start feeling good about what you're doing. And it's, like I said, winning glosses over a lot of areas that need improvement. And so
you start going through the motions a little bit.
Yeah. Well, complacency comes quickly and quietly. It's on you before you know it. It doesn't warn you when it's coming, and then bam, it's there. Yeah. And if you're careful, you will fall into it. And so, one thing I learned this year is that, personally, my desire to win has never been higher, and like I said, you learn that when you don't win, if you don't win and it doesn't feel that bad to you, maybe your desire to continue to do things that you have to do to be successful, maybe it's not as high. But I think, personally, I think my desire to win has never been higher. And I want our kids to experience that. We're going to do it the right way, for sure. We're never going to sacrifice our integrity to win games. But I mean, we have as a staff, I can speak for our staff, we have a strong desire to do things the right way, but to win every game we play. And that's our goal. And we want to do right by kids and help them be successful when they're 30, 35, 40 years old. And still those principles in them. And so, like I said, I just can't say enough about this year's team. But for me personally, we certainly learned a lot. I learned a lot. You find out who your friends are, you have a tough year, and, who's still supporting you, sending you a text, and so. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's a football game. It's not like it's not a life or death situation.
I don't know. I've been to Maryville. I've been on those sidelines. I've seen it. I don't know about that.
No, yeah, it's a great place to be. I promise you that. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else.
But it's good, right? Like the pressure, you won't find it in a lot of other spots. The pressure it's a different kind of pressure. But know there. Yeah, you know what you're walking into.
Yeah, the worst thing you could ever want to do at a place like this is lower the expectation. There'd be teams that if they went 11-4, they'd parade down the middle of town. Made it to the semifinals. And we're proud of that. I'm not saying that we're not proud of what we accomplished this year, because I think this team accomplished a lot. But at the end of the day, I don't want anybody to in Maryville to start lowering their expectations, because we want to win championships. We want to win games, and that may not be our priority, because I think high school football is built to teach you about life than any other game or really activity probably that's ever been created. And that's why I love it. That's why I love this game. That to me is the priority, and it should be. And I think our coaching staff embodies that so well. And they all go out of their way to spend time with our kids off the field and invest in them and love them and serve them so well. But secondly, we want to win, and we're willing to work hard for it. I just don't think I think that's the best route. That's the best thing you can teach a kid is to work hard for this. And here's the thing, and we tell them all the time, hard work doesn't guarantee you success, but it's the only chance you'll have. So that's our route, developing kids. We believe, in a book by James Collin, Good to Great. It's like this, you might have read it, but it's just it's a classic, and it's one that leaders and business men and women, I'm sure, have read for years. But one of the things I love about that book is he talks about the hedgehog concept, and those very successful companies, they knew who they were. They didn't try to, they didn't jump at the latest trend and the next flash in the pan and try to get rich quick and all this stuff. They knew who they were. They stuck to it. They found what they could be the best in the world at, and they just improved on that. And so, that's kind of the idea that we've taken at Maryville. Is one of the things I think we can do as good or better than anybody is develop kids from a freshman to a senior. And so that's where we put all of our efforts in developing our kids. Obviously from a football perspective, but also off the field and character building and all that stuff too. Goes down to the specifics of their position, but the development, and we've got a larger staff, great coaches. I think we've got like 6 or 7 former head coaches on our staff, and we believe in development of kids, and that's our hedgehog. That's who we are. And so we play a full freshman schedule, we play a full JV schedule, and then obviously we play a full varsity schedule. And that's like I tell our guys, the only way you get better at playing football is by playing football. So we'll play as much football as we possibly can, let our tons of kids play, so that way as they grow and they develop into good football players.
I like it, because most kids, like when you do the math, people just 99% are never playing the NFL. 99.999, even college. Like it's really, really hard, and it should be, like you said, about developing and getting you ready for life. And I that's one of the reasons I will always love and cover high school football, is for reasons like that. It's early. It's February 1st, so you haven't done spring ball yet. But you still have an idea of how different your team might look in the fall. What do you think is going to be, for the fans who are curious about what looks the most different? What do you think is going to look the most different about the 2023 Maryville Rebels schematically than the year prior?
Yeah. So what's crazy is, my first year as head coach was 2016, and we had a really good idea going into that year, 18, 19, 20, who we were going to be. Last year was the first year I can remember we were like, man, I have no idea. We were learning who we were.
Yeah. Noah Vaughn's good. I know we could do something with him.
Who's that?
Noah Vaughn's good. I know he's good.
Well, Noah was pretty good. But we were learning who we were, had a new quarterback, Matthew Clay. We were learning who we were into October, and as I'm like, gosh, I wish we could find out faster. And I'm trying to figure it out as fast as we can. But you just, we played Oakland with 2 sophomores in the backfield, and at times that didn't really play all year, because of injuries, and I mean, you just got to adjust and move on. And so it was just one of those years. This, I feel like I'm in the same boat again. Like, we had 17 seniors that started, and they're gone.
Yeah.
And one of them, his last name was Vaughn. Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, and he's at Virginia. He's not going to be anymore. But we do have some good players coming back. We actually will be young. I think everybody thought we were young. We weren't young. We're just inexperienced. We actually will be younger this year. But man, we've got some good young players at Maryville. I mean, really do have some good young players, and some of them that we're excited about. So this might be one of those years where, we're still trying to figure out who we are. But I'll tell you this: at the end of the year, we're going to have a lot more come back the following year because they're not all going to be seniors. That's my prediction. So I feel really good about where our program's at. And, we haven't lost a coach at Maryville in a long time. And, that has been huge for the consistency of our program from one season to another.
Final two questions. Tape hero that did not light up the stat sheet from this past year, that the folks, like, they just look at stats after the game and they're like, oh, he did this, he did that. Who did you see week in, week out that you were like, man, you're up Saturday morning watching, you're like, he's just solid. He just does a lot of the little things that we really, really needed that will not show up in the stat sheet. Who fit that bill for you this year?
Yeah, the guys that played what we call the H, but it's kind of like that. It's kind of like that fullback, H-back type player. There was three of them, really kind of four of them that did that. And so it started off Eli Elkins, and then until he got injured, Gage Ledoux did a lot, and then he went back when Noah got hurt. Price Davis and Jonah Arms, two sophomores that I just talked about, they took it over in the playoffs. And so those guys are exactly, you just described them. They may not touch the ball but 3 or 4 times a game, but they do so much and allow us to do so much as an offense of motioning and shifting and getting an extra hat on a certain side. And then obviously the stuff that nobody likes to do anymore in football, and that's block. And, football is still all this crap we talk about and all that. It still comes down to blocking and tackling. If you block, if you can get off block and make a tackle, or if you can block their butts and run the football, it just sets up the pass. It just makes you so much harder to defend. And at the end of the day, football is still about those things. And those 4 guys I just mentioned, they're the kind of the unsung heroes of the group that make a Noah Vaughn, look really good.
It's funny too, like, it sounds like kind of where your team's going in, especially with next year. And this was the last 49ers thing I promise I'll bring up, but they're on the brain, and I love watching Shanahan scheme and everything. And one of the things they built their team with CMC and Debo that we were talking about, and we're talking about the future of the sport, is, like you said, tackling and blocking is so important, but like building a team around guys who are just so good after contact is a good way of winning. So like Maryville just being like, understanding that, like, hey, all these guys are super physical and are hard to bring down. Like, when your whole group is just a pain to bring down, like, that's a good strategy too. And that's what they built their team on, is just all these guys were not necessarily the fastest, not necessarily the shiftiest, but because tackling is so much worse now than it was 10 to 15 years ago, when you build your team around guys who it's tough to bring down, even if they're not the best athletes, you can win a lot of football games because everyone stinks at tackling and doesn't want to tackle them because they're just hard to bring down. That's just a pain. So like that's something I was just thinking about. Like, watching you guys against Powell this year, I saw that was the one I saw up close before I broke my foot. Would have saw y'all more. I broke my foot the week of my wedding, coach. Like, I broke my foot running. I've been a runner every day of my life for 16 years, cross country track, all that. Broke my foot week of my wedding, and I was in a boot for 2 months. It was a whole thing. Like, I don't wish that on my worst enemy, breaking a foot. Getting back to what I was, but seeing it was just running it down their throats, and just it was a fun game. But like, Powell had some big dudes, but like, you just didn't want to bring a lot of your guys down. Like, y'all have that kind of mentality where might not be the fastest, but they're going to hit you over and over and over again. We're going to see how much you want to tackle. And that's like one of the things I'd written down for Maryville. It's like, we're going to see how much you want to tackle when you play Maryville.
Man, I mean, I kind of am proud that you said that about us, because, just that excites me, because that's football in a nutshell, and we love to be flashy and impressive on offense too. But at the end of the day, you got to do what gets you there. And there's been games, and that Powell game was one of them, where, sometimes certain things aren't working. and you got to put the ball in the hands of somebody who's really hard to tackle.
Yep.
And it's not rocket science,
That's what happened in that game. I just read them like they just can't tackle him. They're just not going to bring him down. They're just going to wear him down. It's over. Like it was one of those. It was over.
Yeah, and you try to wear on them, and it happened to us. Teams have done that to us before too.
Yeah.
And like I said, they've got a lot of dudes that are hard to tackle, and you get into the second half, and guys get tired, and they wear on you, and they lean on you. And, it's tough, but you can only prepare so much for that, because at the end of the day, they're the ones out there that got to do it, and that's it kind of challenges your will to an extent. So, but that's what makes football so great. That's and it's the man in the arena. That's the Teddy Roosevelt quote that I love, that everybody, that I think Tom Brady, has his I guess it's not his podcast, but there's a video about him on Apple TV, and a series about him, and that's what it's man in the arena. He's the one that did it. Whether you fail or whether you win, at least you did it. At least you tried, and the critic doesn't matter. And so, I love that, and it's so true. You got to get out there and try, and these are the ones who are willing to stay tough the longest come out in the end.
Absolutely. We'll end here, Coach. It's the off season. It's February. What's the most fun you've had post regular season and playoffs? What have you found yourself? What's some fun stuff that Coach Derek Hunt has done in there?
Well, so my family had never been to Disney.
Okay.
And I've got 3 kids, all 7 and down, so 7, 4, and 2. And so before Christmas, though that was their Christmas present, we went to Disney for a few.
How was that?
It was awesome. You hear about, hey, I'll never go to Disney, and I've heard Dad say that, and it's kind of funny, But we had a great time. We really did, and I just enjoyed spending time with my wife and my kids, and getting to watch them. I've got 2 young girls, and so it's magical for them, and they get to see that castle and obviously see those characters, and so they loved it, and because they loved it, I loved it, and what was great about it is you're able to get down there and you don't have to worry about football and the things that we as coaches spend all of our time being consumed with and thinking about. So it was really nice. It was a short trip, but it was needed, well needed, and we had a ball.
Did you drive?
We did. We did. And partially because my wife had family halfway. So we kind of killed 2 birds with 1 stone, got to visit them. And we stayed the night at their house and stuff too.
Okay.
So
how was the car ride? That's the big one. Is the car ride? As someone who grew up in that, where I had family in Jacksonville, we did the 7 hours. It was the car ride that got me. That I was like, all right, we got to get out of here. What are we doing in here?
The way down was great. We couldn't have a better trip down. The way back, we hit some road bumps, had some sick kids. I'll details, but we hit some road bumps. But it's just what I love about that. I would have freaked out probably 5 years ago, but when you have your 3rd kid, things you just kind of roll off of you, no pun intended. And we just my wife, we just pulled over, and
you're just used to it. Like you're ready. You're a veteran.
Clean up the mess, and you move on, and you just get back on the road, and everybody's complaining about the smell, but it is what it is.
Are you a minivan guy? Are you driving the minivan down there, or what are y'all driving?
We're listen, minivan is one of the great inventions for a family. It's like driving a hotel room down the highway. So, listen, anybody who wants to hate on the minivan, obviously has never had a large family, because they're phenomenal. They're phenomenal. I don't personally drive one. It's my wife's daily driver. Yeah. Don't think for a second that on a Saturday, if it's sitting in the carport, I may just take it for a spin instead of my truck.
I like it. Coach, how do the good folks check out everything you got going on this off season over at Maryville? How do they support the program as you get ready for spring ball?
Yeah, listen, our community's second to none. I feel like Maryville obviously loves their football, but we're about to. We sell Rebel cards. That's what it's called. Our fundraising cards. So we'll be starting that, and they're really popular in Maryville, and they're a great deal. There's a lot of stuff in town that people can get 10 times their money back on, obviously. But we're excited about kind of what we're got coming. CJ Newton, who does a lot of video stuff and is kind of well known in the video creation and videography, does Tennessee basketball, has done some football, high school basketball as well. But he's going to be coming on board with us, all season, and
Nice.
Really excited about having him, come shoot some of our highlights and do a highlight video for us. And he'll do some game recaps for us and be able to share some stories throughout the year that I think people really like to hear about. So something we're really excited about. And I think you can go follow him on Twitter and Instagram. And then obviously the Maryville Rebels Twitter and Instagram pages that, you'll probably get to see some stuff behind the scenes, maybe that nobody else has ever seen at Maryville High School before.
There you go. I like it. And then you're going to spend the offseason getting ready for TikTok. Coach Derek Hunt is going to spend a lot of time this offseason hitting the TikTok. He's going to be ready for next fall.
I've never had a TikTok. I won't. Yeah. I had a Snapchat about a decade ago for about one day, and then I got rid of it.
Yeah.
I have a Twitter account that I stopped logging on to in probably around June last year. And it's the best decision I ever made.
Yes.
I don't have a Facebook account, don't have Instagram, so I'm off social media.
This is the dream, though. I can't do that, Coach. You're able to do that. I can't. I have to be on all this.
Yeah, you have to. And listen, I respect. It is what it is, and maybe there'll be a day where I'm back. But man,
no, don't say that. Don't. No, Coach, you're gone. Just go ahead and live with it. You're gone. Just enjoy it.
It was depressing. I get on Twitter, and Twitter, like, it's a great news source. Like, that's what it is. It's not really it's not a place where you go socialize with people.
Well, people do, and those
we've given them a platform,
and
it was just depressing, and I was just like, I'm spending too much time. 1 minute on Twitter every day scrolling was too much time. So when I was spending more than that, I was like, I've got to change what I'm doing with my spare time. Not that I have a ton of it, but so that was a and I'm not saying I'm better than people who are using Twitter by any means, but for me personally, it's been really good.
This is how Coach Derek Hunt got into yo-yoing. He was like, I got to do something else. And he's just like, you see him on the sidelines this fall. He's got the yo-yo.
I like a yo-yo. Yeah.
Who doesn't like a yo-yo? Bring that back.
Yep.
Yo-yos are good. Coach, thank you so much for the time. This is a lot of fun. Great catching up. Good luck this off season, and we'll reconnect again very soon.
Awesome. Can't wait, Chase. Thank you so much.